If you've been told AI is coming for low-wage, routine work first, the cashiers, the warehouse pickers, the call center floor, the most detailed measurement of AI exposure published this year says you've had it backwards. The workers most exposed to AI right now earn 47% more than workers with zero exposure. They're almost 4 times more likely to hold a graduate degree. They're more likely to be women. That's the exact opposite of the popular narrative. Here's what you need to know before the end of this video. The people who produce this measurement have a direct financial stake in how you read it. That doesn't make the data wrong, but there's a second story here, and it's not the one in the headline. We'll get there. This is the frontier economy. Let's look at what the data actually shows. In March 2026, researchers Maxim Massenkoff and Peter McCrory published the most detailed attempt yet to measure which jobs are actually touched by AI, not which jobs theoretically could be. Their method combines 2 things: which tasks a language model can technically speed up, and which tasks people are actually observed using AI for in real work settings. That gap matters. A task can be automatable in theory and barely used in practice for legal, verification, or habit reasons. The researchers call the real-world version observed exposure. The 10 most exposed occupations are led by computer programmers at 75% task coverage, followed by customer service representatives and financial analysts. At the other end, 30% of American workers have close to 0 measured exposure. Cooks, mechanics, lifeguards, bartenders, almost entirely physical, in-person work. Compare the 2 groups and the pattern is stark. The most exposed workers are more likely to be women, more likely to be white, and earn 47% more on average. Graduate degree holders make up 17.4% of the most exposed group, compared to 4.5% of the zero exposure group, nearly a 4-fold gap. Here's the part that deserves more attention than it gets. Given who's most exposed, you'd expect the unemployment data to already show real damage. It doesn't. The researchers found no systematic increase in unemployment among highly exposed workers since ChatGPT's release in late 2022. Not a small increase. No detectable increase at all once you compare exposed workers against everyone else. If you doubled the top quartile's unemployment rate the way unemployment doubled nationally during the 2008 recession, that would show up clearly in this data. It hasn't happened. But one signal is real, even if it's small. For workers aged 22 to 25 in the most exposed occupations, the rate of actually landing a new job has dropped about 14% compared to 2022. It's the same finding this channel covered in our entry-level cliff episode, now confirmed by a second, independent dataset. The researchers describe it carefully, barely statistically significant, and consistent with a hiring slowdown rather than layoffs. So the honest picture is this: the workers most exposed to AI are largely fine, for now. The exception is the newest, youngest entrants into exposed fields, who are finding it slightly harder to get in the door in the first place. The mechanism behind this split comes down to what exposure actually covers. Even in the most exposed occupations, AI is covering specific tasks within a job, not replacing the entire role. A financial analyst's data pulling and formatting work might be heavily automated. Their judgment about which numbers to trust and what a client actually needs to hear isn't. That's why the researchers found the BLS's own occupational growth forecasts are only weakly connected to AI exposure. A 10-point increase in exposure predicts just a 0.6-point drop in projected job growth. Exposure to AI and vulnerability to job loss are related, but they are not the same thing. There's a geographic version of this story too. The International Monetary Fund found that in regions where demand for AI-related skills grew fastest, employment in highly exposed occupations with limited room for human-AI complementarity ended up 3.6% lower 5 years later than in other regions. The damage isn't universal. It's concentrated specifically where AI substitutes for a worker's core task, rather than working alongside their judgment. The workers most protected inside exposed fields are the ones whose value was never really the routine part of the job. The 22-year-old whose only value was speed and availability is more exposed than his own manager doing the exact same job for 15 years. One more thing is worth naming plainly because it shapes how you should read all of this. Anthropic, the company that built Claude and the company that ran this exact study, has a direct financial stake in how this story gets told. In June 2026, Anthropic's CEO Dario Amodei published an essay arguing that AI-driven job displacement may be genuinely unavoidable and proposed a tiered policy response, scaling up to universal basic income if national unemployment reaches severe, sustained levels. The same week, Anthropic committed $350 million, $150 million to a fellowship program placing early career workers at non-profits, and $200 million to a fund researching policy responses to AI's economic disruption. Critics were quick to note the scale problem. That $350 million amounts to less than 0.04% of Anthropic's reported $965 billion valuation. Bella Devan, who studies the philanthropy of the ultra-wealthy at the Institute for Policy Studies, put it bluntly: the fox can't guard the henhouse. She argued that AI companies can't be responsible for their own regulation or for defining their own obligations to the people their technology displaces. None of that makes the underlying research wrong. The methodology is transparent, the data is public, and the finding that AI exposure concentrates among higher earners, not lower earners, cuts against Anthropic's own incentive to downplay disruption from its own product. But a company studying the economic damage its own technology may cause is not a neutral narrator, and that's worth holding in mind every time this data gets cited, including by us. The honest read on where this leaves us: the workers who should be paying the closest attention to AI right now aren't the ones the headlines usually point to. They're the highly paid, highly educated professionals whose jobs already look safe. That's the frontier. Back to your inbox.